Hello and welcome to Food Tank's webinar series. This is Sarah Small and I'm Food Tank's Chief of Staff. I'm really excited about today's webinar with the CEO and founder of Zus. I'm probably saying this wrong, Carl. You'll have to correct me later. Zusaka, which is the legume seed company. And in this webinar, Carl will discuss how they are scaling their operations to tackle the challenges faced in the light of climate change, accelerated food insecurity, and land degradation. So this webinar will be recorded today and posted on foodtank.com. You can also follow along and participate on Twitter using #foodtank. And also, please do submit your questions using the questions tab in your control panel or email them to me over at Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, @foodtank.com. So without further ado, thank you all for your patience. We had some tech issues getting set up, but glad you stuck around. So Carl, I will give you the floor now. Thank you.
Okay, hi everybody, however many you are and wherever you are. Sarah said it well. Zusaka is the correct way to pronounce the company. And we work with small scale farmers to generate increased incomes. That's our mission. And the key word in there is with. So Zusaka is a for-profit company. That means that we take on investment. We have to repay our investors. We can go under, we can go bankrupt like Donald Trump. But it also means that we are doing it for the farmers just as much as we're doing it for ourselves. So in order to make our incomes up, we've designed a model that brings their incomes up. What you see here below is our brand name, Good Nature Seeds. That's what we market under. This is our model in a nutshell. We select farmers from within rural communities in Zambia. We select according to not very much, interest primarily, willingness to try something new, willingness to work with a company, to deviate from the norms. And I'll talk a little more about what those are soon. From within those farmers, we select high achieving members of the community. Farmers put forward peers that they want to be their leaders. We go into the next stage, which is to strengthen. We deliver trainings to those farmers that are selected as to make them become private extension agents. A private extension agent is an employee of Zusaka and works for the betterment of their peers, but they're also working to make an income like we are. They get paid on commission. So whatever is produced by the farmers that they're overseeing, they oversee 40 each. They get paid a percentage of that as we sell the seed. Then we engage with the farmers monetarily by financing them. We give a loan of seed, which is repaid at harvest time with more seed. We also offer up other inputs that help them grow their land, produce better. We grow with the farmers. We work with them throughout the year. The Ps are engaging with them every week, delivering additional trainings, following up, doing field visits. We buy back the crop that's produced. 100% of the legume seeds that they produce with Zusaka will be bought back by us at a premium price, and then we sell under that same brand name, Good Nature Seed. That's the model in a nutshell, and this is the model in a person. This is Monica Banda. Monica started with Zusaka in 2014, our first year. Zusaka's recently turned 2, so it's a small company but growing quickly. Zambia is fortunate because it's, as my co-founder Sunday Salungwe likes to say, land linked. It has 8 borders or 8 bordering countries, which is pretty rare in the world. But Monica doesn't see a whole lot of that. She's isolated. The ratio that you see here, 5,000 to 1, is the number of farmers that each government extension agent is expected to reach. So she's not only isolated from these surrounding markets, but she's isolated from training and from knowledge. 94% is the percentage of land in our area that gets planted to maize and cotton. So 2 highly extractive crops that are degrading the soil and aren't designed for a shifting climate that we're facing. 78% of rural farmers within Zambia are below the poverty line. They're making less than $1.25 per day. This is Monica's field in 2014. with Zasaka on the right and without on the left. So what you can't see very well in this picture is that between the rows of maize there on the right, there's cowpea intercropped. So Monica could functionally get 2 crops off of that one field. What you can see is the impact that training makes. And in numbers, this is really what we're after. That year, Monica actually made an increase of $300 per hectare. This year, our farmers on average are seeing about 180. That's over a standard maize field on 1 hectare grown. Monica's story with Sasaka continues. The first phase of our model, Select, consists of people putting names forward for high achieving farmers to become Ps. Each group of 10 farmers that we enroll puts one name forward. Then we put 4 groups together. We have 4 nominated Ps. Zasaka narrows those 4 to 1, and we have our extension agent who's going to oversee 40 farmers throughout the year. In 2015, Monica became a P, overseeing 40 of her friends, her neighbors, her family, as they produced and tried to replicate her results. When Monica enrolled with Sasaka, and this year we're running it, started last week, she went to P College. P College is a month-long training program. In this, these farmers, near where they live, essentially go back to school. They're entering a participatory program where they fill out workbooks, they grow crops. They're essentially operating within a farmer field school as they pick up the skills they need in financial education, group management, and agronomy to help their peers do better. Once leaving P College, they're going to go out to their farmers and they're going to introduce a few select crops, all legumes. Legumes, as many of you likely know, are most noted for their ability to pick nitrogen from the air. They work with the soil, the rhizobia in the soil. They work with the bacteria there to fix nitrogen from the air, which are our most abundant atmospheric element. We go a little bit further by going from just legumes to specific varieties that work best for a small-scale farmer in our climate. The varieties that we pick are early maturing. So you see, the lady you see here is named Anis Tembo in a field of cowpea. The crops that she has around her, this is a variety called Lutembwe. Lutembwe matures in 70 to 90 days. 70 to 90 days is really quick compared to the 140 it can take for maize. As we get shorter and less predictable growing seasons, it becomes more important for farmers that they know that their crop can be ready before the rains stop. The second trait that you see is biomass. Most of these farmers are operating on depleted soils. Having a legume helps. It helps a lot when you don't have to add excess nitrogen. But what's really going to add up fertility over time is this biomass, this green matter that can become residue and then get turned back into the soil. And the last trait is free inoculating. So I mentioned before about the rhizobia. The varieties that we choose are exceptionally well suited for the bacteria in our area. Here's why. What you see on the right is maize following a drought. What you can't tell from this picture, but maybe can start to get a view on from the map at left, is how frequently this happens. When El Niños come through, as they did last season, hitting Zimbabwe, Malawi, parts of Zambia, giving South Africa its worst drought on recorded record, you see fields like this everywhere in Southern Africa. Shifting crops, diversifying, going after those traits that I just mentioned on the previous slide is the quickest way that farmers can adapt and make sure that they have food on the table throughout the year. This isn't even an income question at this point, it's a hunger question. When the droughts come, if they're still reliant entirely on maize, they're gonna go hungry. Diversification is phase 1 of our program. Then phase 2 is what we call the land improvement program. So Zasaka works with our farmers not just to take those initial steps towards long-term land improvement, but also to take really aggressive, assertive strategies and put them in place in ways that fit their needs. Um, I'll come back to this one, but we work with each of our farmers to take soil samples and are partnered with a local fertilizer company in Zambia called Omnia to do this. Um, each farmer then gets a peek at what their soil has, what it doesn't, which is extremely rare for farmers in this region. Um, we then adapt strategies to different buckets of farmers based on what they most need, looking at issues of acidity, looking at uh, phosphorus, nitrogen, micronutrients, and we adjust our strategies to resolve these issues. And then we implement. So what you see here are our three broad strategies for the land improvement program. I should have mentioned by now that I didn't. Sarah gave me a tip and I didn't even mention the numbers, but we started with 40 farmers in 2014, 400 in 2015, and now we have 2,000 enrolled in 2016. So even though we're taking these strategies that seem really um, costly and seem like they're really burdensome on the farmers, we're only implementing them at stages and a pace at which we can scale them. This is true on the farmer's perspective as well. One of the three strategies is composted manure. We've started working with an industrial chicken farm in the area to bring in chicken manure, which is laid down, can we say, on a bed of groundnut shells and sawdust. This is an exceptional base for compost. So we start composting it in a semi-industrial fashion. And then when it comes to the customized step, we can blend it with other um, inputs like lime, like fertilizer, to adjust for what farmers need. This brings precious organic matter. It also suits that particular field. The second is nitrogen fixing trees. This will be the first year that we're using this strategy. So I've shamelessly pulled this stock photo from the internet. But um, the, the strategy here is a bit longer facing. Farmers plant trees throughout their field at 5 meter spacing. These trees take a little bit of time to go, but by the third year, they're putting out significant amounts of nitrogen. They're leguminous as well. And they put down a ton of leaf litter, actually about 4 tons per year, which can be incorporated into the soil and serve many of the same functions as manure, even if it doesn't have the robust mix of nutrients. And then the third is what we started with, actually, intercropping cowpea and maize. This year, we'll be trying some different strategies with turning it in at different times with farmers, engaging them in the kind of research and development as we look at the practices that suit their timing, their labor availability, and their wallet the best. Once the crop is produced, Zasaka buys, as I mentioned, 100% of the legume seed that comes from our farmers. This year we purchased about 80 tons. We work with each of our farmers on about half a hectare. It goes a little more or less depending on the fields that they have available, but we buy back at rates that are extremely favorable to them. We buy cowpea at a 100% premium on the market price. This is all based on what we can get when we sell the seed. We buy groundnut and soybean at 25% premiums, and this year we'll be entering into pigeon pea as well, which has a huge market in South Asia, around India and the Middle East. Once Sasaka has all this seed in hand, we go through a couple different stages in our distribution chain to get it out to more farmers. The first stages that you see in the top are focused on quality control. We aggregate at depots, ultimately bring it to our headquarters here in Chipata, Zambia, where we go through an intensive quality control that involves hand sorting under the guidance of our quality control officer. Everything there is just focused on making sure we get the purest seed possible. We work with the local government, the Seed Control and Certification Institute. All of our seed is certified. We package it, brand it, and then send it out to these three channels that you see in the middle level. These are defined as our viable partners for growth. We look at wholesale organizations consisting of NGOs, um, the government, other large companies that are looking for people to produce seed for them. And we either contract produce or we sell after harvest on tenders, which is like a call for an input. The second channel is large agri dealers. So there is a robust network of essentially entrepreneurs who have been around for a long time, running small, medium, pushing on the edge of large businesses. These are mostly focused in towns, although the towns can be as small as 5,000, 3,000 people. And this is where farmers have traditionally gone to get their inputs. So we have a couple direct relationship with agro dealers. We also work through two of the new and rapidly growing e-voucher programs running in Zambia. The first is run by the government, and that's really shifting and I think improving the way that input subsidies are provided by the government. And the second is provided by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Um, so farmers can come with their debit cards, swipe at any of these large agro dealers, and get access to good nature seeds that help them diversify. And then lastly, we're looking at more rural distribution. These are characterized by smaller packaging sizes. So we deal with farmers, essentially. These community agro dealers are farmers. They're often growing themselves. They're out in the rural areas anywhere from 20 to 50 kilometers from these main towns where the large agro dealers are. And they're doing their part to help bring inputs closer to farmers. So we're making the extra step this year to deliver our inputs to them and then work through agents. What you see here, this MAWA, is a nod to one of our longest serving partners through Catholic Relief Services, the MAWA project. These are individual agents who take it one step further and sell to their farmers that they work with through this project. So we work through individual agents, small scale agro dealers, large agro dealers, and wholesale organizations who are going to deliver to hundreds or thousands of farmers at once. And the last step you see here with the farmers is about linking the markets. Um, we see seed as the original multiplier effect. So what we produce, and I can clarify the word seed here, is only crop that's meant to be replanted. Um, from one of our seeds, you can get 50 more. So by working with our farmers at the very beginning of this model, we can turn a little bit of seed into a lot. Then when we reach the end, we want to make sure that our customers, these farmer beneficiaries you see here, have somewhere to take their output. They're not producing seed, they're producing food. So they're producing these legumes that are high protein, well suited to droughts, high biomass, all the things that I mentioned before, and selling to more farmers, to more people who are in need of protein, to more people who need a crop that can work for them, um, to organizations. They sell to the World Food Program, it's the largest customer in the region. When Zasaka sells seed through any of these mid-level channels, we track the phone number, the region, the quantity, and the name of the farmer who buys it. And then we are developing a system this year to reach them through cell phones, whatever they may have, and link them to markets. This is a two-way communication. So we talk to the ultimate buyer and let them know where legumes are being produced. And we also talk to the farmers and let them know what markets are available within their region. Zasaka's growth and future are based on how well we can take this model and show results to our farmers. I mentioned that we grew from 400 farmers to 2,000, but those 2,000 were selected from 3,560 that applied. We did that without essentially growing our geographic base at all. So far, the results we've been putting forward have meant essentially a better life for the farmers that we work with. And as long as we can continue to do that by building up the capacity of our farmers, by focusing on crops that help them, and focusing on our bottom line as well, then Zasaka will continue to grow. Thanks for attending. I think I'm way under time, but that leaves a lot of minutes for some good Q&A.
Thank you, Carl. We do have some time here for Q&A, but I want to thank you first for a really informative presentation. We do have questions from our listeners, both on social media and in our live room. So let's start to get through as many as possible. We have listeners from all over the world, which is pretty interesting today. So from Cape Town, South Africa, to Kenya, to Washington, D.C., to Italy, to Wisconsin, to Germany, to Toronto, they're all here. And one of our listeners wants to know, is the model that you're using applicable to other parts of the world?
Yeah, we want to know that as well. We believe it is, and we're designing it to be scalable, replicable. We haven't tested it yet, but as we go through this kind of scaling process, next year we're targeting between 8 and 15,000 farmers, depending on essentially how this year goes. And as I mentioned, the demand has to come from farmers. But we're starting to tweak the model a little bit to see if, one, we can work outside of this legume seed box. The legume seed market is not endless. You only have a set number of farmers who are interested in buying legume seed, and that number is growing. But it's not going to grow as fast as we would like our impact and our reach to grow. So the first thing that we'll be looking at are legume commodities. And the way that we look at our expansion, we look at kind of market availability, and tenability, and agronomic tenability first. So are they feasible? Do we have a ready customer that's ready to take off the output? And do we have the type of land that's going to work for this production? And do we have the farmers that are interested? If we can check each of those, then the different components of our program can be adjusted in relatively small ways to take it just about anywhere.
Thanks, Carl. And our next question comes from our listener, Sylvia. She wants to know, has it been a challenge to build the transportation infrastructure needed?
Yeah, truth is we haven't built it. We've adapted, sometimes painfully. So on that distribution chain map that I pulled up, the first step of pulling from depots to pods, that's done in ox carts. Um, that's probably not going to last forever. So we're very much working with and kind of working around the infrastructure that exists now, but we see a need to become much more systematic in how we can adapt to this. Some of that's going to come from moving our processing or our abilities to get closer to our final product, out to closer to the farmers. Some of that may come from working with government. What we don't want to do is alter our farmer profile just to fit that, in our view, relatively small um, speed bump. And what I mean by that is where we've chosen to start our business was with some of the most remote and least connected farmers in Zambia. They haven't had, the camp that we initially started in hasn't had a government extension agent since independence in 1964. So we wanted to test our model in untouched areas where we could provide a service that wasn't provided in any way, not just provided poorly, but not provided at all. And so if that means dealing with poor infrastructure, then we will continue to adapt.
Thanks, Carl. And so our next question comes from a listener, and it reads, I think it's really interesting that you've created a model where farmers can make more seed out of the seed distributed by Zasaka. This is different than many seed providers in Africa, which also only sell GMO or seeds that have just one life. Was that an intentional part of your business plan?
Yeah, it was. And we live with the pros and cons of that. One, we knew we were coming to Zambia where GMOs are banned. Two, we knew we were dealing with crops, legumes, which are primarily open pollinated, so they can be um, replanted essentially endlessly. Um, and what that means for us is it's been difficult to position ourselves as a continuous provider to the same farmer. So our ability to grow our market is, or to continue to have a market, is based on growing it. We have to convince more farmers that it's worth planting more of their land to legumes and that we have the varieties that fit them best. So we do that by focusing our marketing on the traits that I mentioned before, as well as the price that they can get at harvest, and working with the best research institutions in the area, with ICRISAT, with IITA, to bring in new varieties relatively consistently. This is an area that we want to continue to improve in, is breeding and our ability to bring in better open pollinated varieties. That's not GMO, it's not hybrid, it's just sticking with the best varieties that are out there and playing our part in their multiplication and expansion and implementation. So this year we'll be launching a commercial farm in partnership with those same research institutions, where we'll be working on multiplying earlier, even higher purity seed um, that can go into our outgrower model with those 2,000 to 8,000 farmers in the coming year.
Thanks, Carl. And so our next question, our listener Hugh wants to know, does your training focus on organic slash agroecological farming practices? And then Priscilla wants to know, have you considered integrating more legume trees into intercropping patterns? She writes, this is a very well-known climate smart practice in Central America, and there are many successes in very dry environments.
Yeah, great questions. We're not organic. That's the first thing I can say about it. But we do advocate for lower use of inputs. Um, Through the land improvement program and the strategies I laid out there, through the shift to legumes, we're actually, I would say that our biggest reduction in inputs is fertilizer by far. And that also comes from the part I mentioned about every farmer getting a soil analysis. By doing that, our farmers are no longer flying blind, basically. They are going to know what they need, um, and apply only that. By focusing on organic matter, they're seeing less of their fertilizer leach through the soil, more of it be held where the plants can access it. In terms of agroecological strategies, we are constantly learning, and there are hundreds and thousands. We've just taken three really simple ones. What we're talking about with the leguminous trees, those are intercropped um, with their main food or cash crops, but there's still so many different ways that you can do it. And we've been learning from the government, from NGOs here, from farmers who have been doing it themselves. That's both commercial and small scale, trying to see what farmers are ready and able to apply. And that's how we found the particular tree that we're starting with, as well as the strategy that we'll be using.
Great, thanks, Carl. And our next question reads, why did you decide to work with legumes? Do you think you'll ever expand into other crops?
Yeah, this is similar to the first question in that we're still kind of probing around the edges of what we can do and what we can do well. Um, I and the whole team here actually tries to learn from other companies as much as possible. And have spoken with companies that are growing moringa and companies that are growing horticultural crops, companies that are growing potatoes, companies that are growing maize, and trying to explore what else we could implement this model with. Um, it's not a small challenge to find a crop at which both thousands of small scale farmers and a company can take a livable margin. Um, in most cases, I feel like it's the farmer who ends up getting their margin squeezed. The company lives on, and the farmers kind of remain with the status quo. So what we're looking for are, I would say, scalable niche markets. And we're actively exploring outside of legume seeds to see what those are. If anyone has any ideas or market leads, please email me.
We can pass that along as well, Carl. Thank you. So we're running about to time, and I have one last question for myself. And so I'm wondering today, in what way does a farmer that ends up working with Zasaka's life change the most? And then how can our listeners who are farmers in Zambia or Africa become involved in your operations?
Okay, part one I think is easier. We take both a short and long view, and I actually think that the long view is going to be more impactful, but the short view is easier felt. Um, as I mentioned, farmers are increasing their incomes by between $180 to $300 per hectare. They know that from harvest. As soon as the crop comes off the field, we're ready to pay them. We pay them cash. They know that, and that's why the enrollment was so huge, so available. The sneakier part, and the part that I think has more staying power, is the focus on land improvement. I say sneaky because these aren't things that are going to give like an immediate wow effect. You can get fields like what I showed from Monica if you do a kind of before and after, but mostly you're going to see results in 2, 3 years. That takes a while. But I believe that for both Zasaka, who's interested in having a steady supply chain as well as helping farmers, and for the farmers themselves who need to plant other fields outside of Zasaka and who need to, I don't know, probably live beyond the company or at least plan for that. Um, that's what's really going to take them forward. Other models give inputs, give some small trainings, usually based on an NGO kind of model, and they see impacts for a year or 2 or 3. But as soon as they leave an area and research what happens, all of them disappear. The impact disappears, the increased income disappears, and that's even for organizations that don't have a market. I mean, they're not the ones who are buying, they're just seeing farmers stop doing what they were doing before. But if you can build up the land, which is the most important natural resource available to a farmer, then that's not going to go away. That's not going to go away immediately. So you can keep having those positive effects. And to the second part of your question, you first can start by making the small change that we're advocating in markets around the country of diversifying, of trying something new, pushing outside of that 94% to the 6% who are looking at legumes as a good nutrition source in the face of climate change with markets. And we'll do our part to continue linking you to markets. With the way that we're intending to grow, hopefully, if you're in Zambia, we'll be reaching you within a few years, or Malawi. Um, and just keep your ears and eyes open for Zasaka and Good Nature Seed.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Carl. We are out of time, but I also want to thank all of our listeners for sending in their questions. It's been a pleasure spending this afternoon with all of you. So again, this webinar was recorded. If you jumped in the middle and want to catch up with the beginning, we'll be posting it both on Danielle Nierenberg's YouTube channel and foodtank.com later today. And you can register for our future webinars now on foodtank.com under our events page. So thank you to everyone again, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody.